You know the life that you want, but the more you compare it to the life you have, the more you see how far away it truly is. The overwhelm destroys you from the inside out, leaving you to do the only thing guaranteed to not move you forward. Nothing. I'm Will. At the age of 26, I've completed a 100-mile ultramarathon, tried stand-up comedy as a self-conscious introvert, done a 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat, and approached over 1,000 women. In this show, I break down the principles that help me to do all of these challenging things and continue to add to the list. Every week, I leave you with one new simple daily action to build your own willpower and come along for the journey. Welcome to the Willpower Podcast. Today, we're talking about getting from the life you have to the one that you actually want, especially when the gap between those two is very wide. I mean, we're told to dream big, right? And every day it seems like we're shown people with vastly different lives than us through movies, TV, and especially social media. You might have a specific body that you want, or a certain income, or a relationship, a family, or just an enlightened level of awareness or intellect. Now, I would never tell you not to dream big, but I am going to help you understand why your current approach isn't working and how you can begin bridging the gap in a way that takes advantage of your natural psychology. Once you understand this concept, you'll be able to take a huge and potentially overwhelming vision and begin the domino chain that will actually bring it to fruition. As always, at the end, we will build one simple daily action as an application of the concept. I built a tool for everyone listening to stay accountable and keep up with our weekly actions. It's completely free. Check it out at board.williammulvaney.com. So we're talking about grand goals and life visions. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about stand-up comedy. If you've been following along with this show, you know that recently I have been trying it out. I'm extremely new to the game, so I won't speak as an experienced veteran or in any way, but I am endlessly interested in the path that stand-up comedians take from absolute beginner to becoming professionals and going even beyond. As our example for today, let's talk about one of the most famous comedians of all time, Jerry Seinfeld. To this day, millions of people still watch his 30-year-old TV show, and hundreds of thousands come out to see him live every year. When he started in 1976, however, he had none of that. No TV show, no one spending money to come see him, no one even coming to see him. He was just a recent graduate, a nobody, who knew he wanted to be a professional stand-up comedian. How do you go from no one knowing you to becoming a global sensation with a TV show on public television in which 76 million people tune in live for the finale? It all starts with open mics. So these are shows that anybody is allowed to sign up for. Sight unseen, you don't need to be selected because of your comedy. They don't pay, and they typically come with set lengths of 3 to 5 minutes. So you get on stage for a very brief amount of time. Audiences at these shows are very inconsistent to match the inconsistent talent that shows up. It's a whole bunch of beginners, so you can guess there's not going to be a ton of people lining up to come see. This delivers the 1-2 punch, right? Early comics get very little time on stage and almost nobody watching to practice on. This is a cruel irony. At the point where you're at your absolute worst, you're a brand new beginner, you also are getting the least amount of opportunity to practice and get better at the thing. If a comedian is able to get past that first step, the next step is where you get noticed and you actually get booked. So this is where you start to get real shows. You get 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here. The difference is you're not signing up to be on a show, you're actually being selected. Someone saw what you did and they decided, hey, I want this person to be in my show. The spot is now guaranteed and the audiences are typically a little bit bigger. There still may not be pay. If there is, it's going to be not very much. So you continue to build the craft, you start to get better bookings, get more time on stage, you start getting paid. At some point you might be asked to feature for a more famous comedian. Now you're really getting paid. The next step is to build up the notoriety to headline. So that's where you have your own show. People are paying to come to your show. And that's a huge step because that means you have enough people outside of the comedy scene who know who you are, who are willing to pay money to come see you. Now, we've only talked about the process of getting to this headlining act, right? And we've also compressed it. This is often a 10, 15, 20-year process. And we also haven't even touched the idea of getting multiple levels beyond that, selling out arenas, having a huge TV show. There's levels beyond that we haven't even touched yet. And yet already we are seeing the incredible difference between his vision and the place he started as a new graduate in 1976. So he knew he wanted to be a famous stand-up comedian. How did he not just give up in the face of this incredible divide? There's a practice of Jerry's that you've probably heard of before. If you haven't, I'll explain it very quickly. He would take a calendar, and every day that he wrote any jokes, he would mark an X through that day on the calendar. That was the rule. Minimum, write one joke, and then you get to mark off the day. Now, this exact story, this example of Jerry Seinfeld writing his X's has been mentioned in very popular books like Deep Work and Atomic Habits to illustrate the power of visual progress and the strong aversion that we humans seem to have to breaking chains or breaking streaks. The other piece that is often highlighted, specifically in Atomic Habits, is the ease of the action. So in Atomic Habits, James Clear talks a lot about making the action small. Make it as small as possible. And so that's what Jerry did, right? He made it just write any joke, just one joke at least, and then that counts. And that's to illustrate the fact that it is hard to be a globally famous comedian, right? That's a very hard task. It's easy to just try to write a joke. However, with all of the talk around this subject, there are two aspects of Jerry's practice that are often overlooked or blatantly missed. And those two aspects are equally as important as the ease of the action, which is typically called out. So the first one I'll tell you about, and this comes before the ease of the action, is the specificity of the action. So Jerry's choice was writing jokes. That might seem obvious, but it's actually a practice that many failed comedians never emphasized. Lots of people, lots of new comedians are getting caught up in the complexities of being noticed, getting the right person to see you, getting enough stage time, getting a TV show, meeting the right people. They become overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task. There are too many pieces to becoming a professional stand-up. They feel like they have to do all these different things. Now, Jerry, he found the single most important piece of the craft, the essence. And that was the thing he committed to. That was the thing where he said, okay, I'm going to make this small. So he didn't make it easy until he knew exactly what the thing was that was the essence of his craft. We also need one other piece, and this is what's going to make it extremely effective and solidify the action and also grow it in a way that moves us forward. And this second thing is the other one that gets missed when talking about the Jerry Seinfeld X method. To apply this, we're going to first need to understand a psychological concept called behavioral momentum. So behavioral momentum is kind of what it sounds like, but there is a caveat. Behavioral momentum describes our propensity to do bigger actions following smaller actions that come with fast rewards. It gives us this equation: small actions plus reward equals big actions. The small actions aren't enough on their own. You can imagine a snowball rolling down a hill. It is only going to grow if there is snow on the hill, right? If there's no snow, there's no extra momentum. The ball does not grow. The snow is the reward. Okay, so we need the small action. We need to be able to push it off, but then we also need the reward to help it get bigger, to help it grow. That's behavioral momentum. When this reward circle is tight, that's where we get this addiction-like spiral, where you begin to crave the exact thing that moves you forward towards your destination. And this is a sweet spot. This is a nice place to get to. Talk about how this is actually applied. I want to tell you a little bit about the unexpected consequences of running 100 miles. So last year, I signed up for a 100-mile ultramarathon. In preparation, I built out this huge training plan that accounted for every single day in a 5-month period leading up to the race. I literally had no days off until like a week before the race when I was tapering. For that entire span, I had a very clear goal in mind. I had this like vision that was extremely clear. And I also had a process to get there. Just follow the fucking plan exactly to a T. I was training to finish this thing, right? This was a bucket list item that I had for a few years. And I was just like, I just want to do this thing. And every day I went out training, I knew this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it so that I can finish. Now, because of that, I stayed extremely consistent in following through with those runs. Again, I stuck to that thing every single day, no miles missed. Then the race happened. I finished it. Though it's not as simple as it sounds, that's a story for another day. And suddenly, I had nothing to train for. Stack on top of that, the fact that I couldn't walk. I'm couch ridden for a few weeks after the race. Add on top of that, the fact that I don't want to see another pair of running shoes in my life. And this is a clear recipe for backsliding on my fitness. So once I'm fully healed up, I'm like, okay, I got to get back. I got to get back in shape, start doing the stuff that's going to make me feel good. That's going to make me look good. It's going to make me more capable. And I tried coming up with new training plans with these lofty goals. So I'm like, this thing with the ultra worked with the training plan. Let me try and recreate it in other ways. So I'm doing short distance running. I'm doing a mile or a 5K, seeing how fast I can get there. I'm setting these lifting goals, and I'd follow with the goal. I would be on top of it for a few weeks, and then something would happen. One day I was running, I was going for a fast mile as fast as I could. I tripped over my dog's leash and I fell hard. All I remember is stumbling through the air, and then suddenly my dog is licking my face. Another day I was lifting way too heavy. I hadn't warmed up properly. And as I'm pushing the bar up, I feel something give in my pec, and I'm out for weeks. So both of these injuries were enough to knock me off the plan. So here's the problem that I was running into. I had these huge goals. I'm trying to run a 6-minute mile, trying to bench 3 plates, deadlift 5, but I was too focused on this vision, and I was not focused on the process. And I wasn't focused on getting addicted to the process and sticking with those component actions. So I fall off these goals, and then I moved. I left my house and I moved into an apartment. And my apartment had a simple gym with dumbbells, a few machines, and I made a deal with myself. Felt like I had been failing a lot lately, so I wanted to set myself up for success. I wanted to get back in the win column. So here was my deal. For 3 days a week, I would get in that gym for at least 10 minutes. That's it, just 10. 3 days a week, 10 minutes minimum. Once I hit 10, I would be free to leave, free to be done. And for the first few weeks, that's exactly what I did. I would work out, I would get in there. As soon as I hit 10 minutes, I'm out. I'm like, fuck this, I'm done. Then I started to notice a few changes. First, my muscle definition started to come back. So after the ultra, of course, I lost a bunch of weight, a bunch of muscle, a bunch of fat, all of it. And I started to notice I wasn't back to, my peak, but I was noticing, okay, some of my muscles coming back. I was feeling more confident, more capable. I felt better physically after leaving the gym. Getting back to work, getting back into my day, I felt more energized. I also felt proud of myself. I felt a sense of achievement. I did something that I set out to do, and I've done my thing for the day. So this bundle of rewards increased my behavioral momentum, right? Because we talked about this. It's not just small action equals bigger action. It's small action plus reward equals bigger action. So I picked a small action, 10 minutes, 3 days a week. Then I got these rewards. And guess what happened? As I record this, I'm now on a 10+ day streak of going to the gym every day with a 30-minute minimum. This, I didn't say to myself, okay, you have to go for 30 minutes now. No, this just happened. Because I started to get these rewards, I genuinely just wanted to go more. And so I started going more and more and more. That's what happens with behavioral momentum. Is you do a simple thing and you get the reward, and your body begins to crave the initial thing that got you there. You begin to want more of it. Now this concept, the one that Seinfeld put into action with his X method, ties everything together. So the first step is always just to define the vision, to understand it, to understand what is our goal. Then we need to find an action that fits 3 stipulations. First of all, within the essence of our vision. So it has to be a core element of what your actual goal is. For being a stand-up comedian, it's writing jokes. It's just having jokes to tell. For having good fitness, it is exercising. There are other components to it. We'll talk about that, but getting into the essence. Second, the initial action needs to be small enough to do without reinforcement. So behavioral momentum, we said, is small action plus reward equals big action. We have to be able to do the small action without the reward, right? Because the reward comes from the small action. We can't start with the big action because there's no reward yet. We need to go small action that doesn't need a reward. Then we get the reward, and that is what leads us into a big action. So it's really important that the action is small enough to do without any reward, without any reinforcement. Third, it has to be likely to generate behavioral momentum. Number 2 says we need to be able to do it without reward. Number 3 says, when we do it, we should expect that some reward comes into play. That's what gets us to the bigger action. So let's break down Jerry's action. The essence of being a professional comedian is having jokes, right? That's number 1. Number 2, writing a joke is small enough to do without reinforcement. We can grit our teeth through that kind of action. Number 3, is it likely to generate behavioral momentum? This is the part that's often missed. The behavioral momentum comes because Jerry has another piece of his life that is incorporated into writing jokes, and that is that he is performing the jokes. So if Jerry was just writing the jokes, never going out and performing them, it would be a completely different story. You wouldn't get this snowball effect. You would just get 1 joke per day. But because he has that reward, which is telling jokes and getting feedback, that's where you get bigger and bigger action, natural action. He's doing more shows. He's doing longer time. He's trying to get a TV show. You see what I mean? Same with me getting back in the gym. Essence of being fit is exercising. Number 2, 10 minutes is an amount of time that I could just do if I had to, right? I don't need reinforcement. I don't need to see any progress before I do that 10 minutes. Number 3, we talked about this bundle of rewards, the muscle tone, energy, feelings of accomplishment. Those are all the rewards that are going to reinforce the behavior and turn the small action into a big one. Again, this last step, the behavioral momentum, that's what we're so often missing when we look at going from where we are to where we want to be. We see a small action and we think, oh, like that's never going to get me there. But what we're missing is the fact that if we set up our small action properly, where there is a feedback loop, we will just naturally be driven. You will just begin to crave the thing and crave doing it more. Okay, so think about something that you enjoy doing, that you're like, oh, at the end of the day, I love doing this thing. I love watching TV. I love getting a good meal. I love going and playing sports with my friends. Now imagine that that action was the thing you like needed to do to get to where you wanted to be. That's the type of craving I'm talking about. So at this point, I want you to bring your own vision or goal state, whatever you want to call it, into mind. So think of the one, there's maybe one in the back of your mind that you haven't ever fully pursued because it's too big or seems too far away. Maybe you have pursued it, but you gave up because of that same bigness or distance. And just bring it to mind. It can be specific, can be directed towards one area of your life, or it can also be more broad and general. I want you to take your vision and walk through the 3 checklist items for starting actions. Jerry had to have this extra piece where he's performing his jokes, right? That was necessary to get behavioral momentum. This could be similar in your case. You might have to find a way to put what you're doing out into the world to get reinforcement. For me, with this podcast, for a long time, I've just been posting the podcast and not getting any direct feedback on it. Recently, I tried something out where I actually paid people, strangers, to listen to the podcast and give me feedback on it. That was my way of doing an open mic, putting it out into the world, getting people to give their honest feedback on it. And again, by emphasizing this 3rd step, by making sure that your action has this feedback layer in, that it can actually lead to behavioral momentum, we let our natural motivation systems take over. We begin to take advantage of our natural psychology. So that takes us to this week's action. We are going to use a tried and true canonical area of personal development that is straightforward, almost impossible to get wrong, given enough time and consistency, and that is strength training. In fact, we're just going to adopt the exact same action that I started my gym routine back up with. So we're going to go 3 days a week for 10 minutes of resistance training. Could be lifting weights at the gym, doing machines, or doing push-ups, sit-ups, and body weight squats in your house. I am going to say we are avoiding cardio in this. You can do cardio. I'm not saying not to do it, but the 10 minutes, the minimum here is strictly resistance training. So weights, machines that are causing you to, use your muscles, not just elliptical or something like that. So let's talk about why this works. When we think about fitness goals, being healthy, being shredded, having big arms, it's easy to get caught up in this grandiosity, especially if you're seeing people who have the physique you want. It's easy to get caught up in the vast difference between the two. And in that, we often forget that there's just one simple action that needs to happen. It's working out, right? Doing resistance training. All of the other stuff that gets muddled in there, dieting, protein loading, fasting, whatever, none of that stuff matters if you're not doing the one action. Then we go ahead and make it small. We make it 10 minutes, only 3 days a week. Now, if you're paying attention, you know that this is breaking one of our rules. We'll talk about that later. Typically, we say 5 days a week, but for this one, we're saying 3. 3 days a week, 10 minutes. Anybody can get through this. And even if that seems like too much for you, make the 10 minutes super easy, okay? Like get on the ground, try and do some push-ups, go to your knees if you need to, and then take like a 2-minute rest, and then try and do some sit-ups, take a 2-minute rest, do a few bodyweight squats, it's 10 minutes can fly by, okay? Make it as easy as you need to. Finally, the reason why I chose strength training rather than letting you just do whatever exercise you want is because of these rewards, right? Strength training, I think it's the reason why so many of these bros are like addicted to the gym, is because strength training does come with these very quick rewards. First of all, the pump, right? Everyone loves the pump. So a good pump, for people who aren't aware, you're in the gym, you're lifting, and your muscles like grow a shit ton. And it's because there's just blood flow going to them because you're using them. But it looks like your muscles have genuinely just grown in size. And so what it kind of serves as is a look into the future. It's like, hey, this is what you might actually look like in the future. And so you feel good, you feel bigger, you feel like, oh, this shit is working. So that's number one. That's like the quickest reward. A slower reward is the gradual muscle growth. So that's the actual growth of the muscle that comes from the damage and the recovery. This is when you see yourself in the mirror, you go, oh, wow, I didn't notice I look this way now. Or when you see someone who you haven't seen in a while, they go, dude, you look a lot better. You look really good. These are things that will reinforce the behavior because that's proof. That's proof that this thing you're doing is working. The action I did led to the result I need. That's another reward. Finally, if you are an analytical kind of person, you probably enjoy seeing the progress of weights and reps going up. So you go, oh, I could do only this much yesterday, and then today I did this much, and it was more. That is very satisfying. Another point where you just go, okay, the thing I'm doing is actually working. Small reward, small action goes to a big action. So let's tie this action back to the theme of the show, which is willpower, and this entire idea in general. So willpower, again, is all about exerting our will on the world. It's not just about doing hard things. It's about actually taking what we want to have happen and bringing it into reality. Oftentimes, when we truly define our will, in other words, when we define what we want, it is something very far from the life that exists currently. So this concept that we've talked about, breaking down a huge vision into its single most foundational element in a way that actually leads to bigger and bigger action, helps us to combat this sense of overwhelm and even failure because it makes it extremely simple and then it naturally just begins to bring us on the path. Once we're on the path, we don't need to continue to be overwhelmed by it because we just go, wow, I'm getting closer and closer and I'm doing more and more the longer I stay on this path. It gives us an enjoyable process, right? Whenever we say trust the process, I feel like for me, I'm always like, oh, this sucks. Trust the process. Oh, go to the gym every morning, 6 a.m. and feel like shit. It's not the reality of it. It's not going to feel like shit because you are so fucking reinforced by the process. So it's actually enjoyable and addicting. So all of this wrapped up, our 3-step process to building an action gives us the means to exert our will, the ability to take this thing that we want and to start moving down the path to make it reality. That's willpower. Now, I did pick 2 things today that might seem relatively simple and obvious, and that's the working out and stand-up comedy. And so I understand. If you were thinking of your vision and you're like, no, mine's way more complicated, there's not a clear action. First of all, I totally hear you. What I would recommend is that you start with this strength routine, especially if you've never had success building a strength routine, and use that as proof that you can make progress. Okay, so start with the 3 days a week, let that just carry you forward, and then see what happens from there. If your specific action for your vision becomes clear, begin tracking it. If not, I'm currently working one-to-one with guys in their 20s working on this kind of stuff, and I'd be more than happy to help you define that action. I'm also offering 4 weeks of free coaching right now to the next 5 guys who sign on. That's no commitment, there's no credit card, no auto renewal, nothing. Completely free, 4 weeks. I'm trying to get better at this. So the link is below to book. Now let's get to our commitment. So most important part of every episode is this step, the commitment. You can listen to this whole thing. Like last week, we talked about how there's this cycle that a lot of us fall into where we want to be doing more. And so we watch videos and it doesn't create any action. This is the step where we take what we've learned and we create real action from it. So within the next 24 hours, I want you doing 10 minutes. 10 minutes in the gym, 10 minutes at home, whatever it is, 10 minutes of strength training. Commit to it with me. I will do this in the next 24 hours. Say it out loud. I'll do this in the next 24 hours. Super important that you put this out into the world. You make it real. Now, let's go through the rules of the show. First of all, 5 out of 7 every week is success. For this one specifically, we've marked it at just 3 out of 7 is success. We do this to avoid perfectionism. We also always do it within 24 hours. That is what really gets the ball rolling. If we push it off too far, there's more of a chance that we will just never actually do it. Number 2 is not to add too many habits all at once, to try and space them out every 3 days or so. Third is to do each one for at least a month before deciding whether or not to quit. And fourth is to track your habits. Again, I built an awesome public community board where you can track your habits and stay accountable. You can see if I'm doing my habits, I can see if you're doing yours. That is the end of today's show. I hope that there was some value that you could take from this and some real action that comes of this. If you know anyone who could benefit from more willpower, please share with them. Other ways to support, comment, follow, subscribe, hit the bell icon, anything that just keeps me in your loop. Above all else, make sure to do the action itself. Okay? So I can get this out to however many thousands of people, and it would mean nothing to me if no one was doing it. If, on the other hand, I know that you listening to me right now were like, yeah, I'm actually going to do this thing, that means the world to me. That would make this a success. So above all else, commit to doing the action. With that, we will wrap it up. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.